what lessons and or what inspiration, what knowledge we can glean from surfing. It's very profound. People love the notion of humility with this big ocean. They love the notion of spirituality, of connecting to nature, of the unknown, of the uncertainty, the fear, the perseverance, the resilience, all this beautiful stuff that we don't really learn anywhere else. Sure, tubes and airs are exciting and important, but a calf is like a pure brushstroke emanating from the soul to the heart to the mind and out through the body and board and onto a white embroidery on that expansive and windswept wave face.
That is a couple of quotes from today's guest, 1977 World Surfing Champion Shaun Tomson. And after Shaun's surfing career, he took a lot of the lessons he learned into the business world and was very successful there. And Shaun's also a best-selling author, and he's an expert and a master at not just articulating the lessons that we need to take into surfing, but also explaining how the lessons that we learn from surfing can be applied to all aspects of life. Please bear with the glitchy audio in the first 5 minutes, but I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Shaun Tomson.
Thanks for taking the time, Shaun. I appreciate that. First, let me say, the book, The Surfer and the Sage, thoroughly enjoyed that on many levels, actually, not just the content of the book, but the format and the succinctness of it. Because sometimes when someone recommends a book or I have to read a book or something, sometimes I cringe because I know it's going to be a 16-hour mission of just blabbering on. But this is so succinct and concise and very digestible and very profound as well. So well done on that book.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, we put a lot of thought in. Even the book, the concept came together in 5 minutes. We met, Noah Ben-Shir and myself, and I'd heard about him. He had heard about me. A mutual friend introduced us. We had lunch. And we'd been chatting for about 5 or 10 minutes. And he said to me, "Hey, Shaun, let's write a book together." And I went, "Cool. We'll call it The Surfer and the Sage." And he said, "Okay, Guide to Survive and Ride Life's Waves. Done." So we had the basic concept dialed in on the spur of the moment. And then when we were conceptualizing the book, like, how's his voice going to work? How's my voice going to work? Because it's complicated, when you've got two people and he has a big following and I have sort of my own particular sort of ride and way and voice. I'd been doing these presentations. I do these virtual presentations. Well, through COVID, I spoke to about, 50, 100,000 people virtually. Through very large companies, PTSD survivors, rehab clinics, schools, universities, some of the biggest companies in the world, some of the best universities in the world. And I'd started out, I'd say, send me a word that describes how you're feeling. And everyone can text me a word, and by insane technology, it all flies into my PowerPoint and it forms a word cloud. So I had a good indication of how people were feeling when we were conceptualizing the book. Like, how is America feeling? How was Australia feeling? How was South Africa feeling? How was Israel feeling? How was Asia feeling? Because I was doing stuff all over the world. And the 4 words were stress, anxiety, depression, and disconnection. So those were 4 big fundamental problems. And the way we thought of the book, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a cool perspective, and it's just going to be a guide to help you go from a negative space to a positive space. So that's why every chapter is a negative and a positive, with the negative first being that is for many people, the default. That's what I saw. That's what people had told me. People in all sectors of life. People struggling with addiction, people that have been blown up and are suffering PTSD, university students, high schools, and then the hottest companies in the world, fully employed. So people that weren't weren't insecure financially. So that's how we structured it. And then I said to Noah, hey, Noah, because he's a scholar of theology. I said, what's a sacred number for the amount of chapters? Like, what's a sacred number? In Judaism, there's like a mystical offshoot. It's called Gematria, I think, Gematria. And every letter in a Hebrew alphabet is assigned a numeric. So he said, well, let's do 18 chapters. So I said, well, why 18? He said, 8 and 1 is 9, 9 is chai, chai is life. So that was the structure. How simple is that?
Yeah, no, I really like that. And it's so important to speak of the negative, because you have to acknowledge and understand the negative in order to, see and understand its positive opposite.
Absolutely. You can't just, walk there with, I love optimism. I love hope. I love these concepts of resilience, but underlying them, there's the opposite. And you have to show that, because you can't just not look over there at the darkness. The darker the night, when you shine the light, it's brightest. It's amazing. When you think about light in the daytime, it's diffused. But you shine that light in terms of, helping others, being a mentor, however you want to, loving your family, loving your son, your daughter, your mom, your dad. In the context of darkness, you can make much bigger impact.
The bigger the storm, the more insane the chaos. And the further, with a bit of depth and a bit of time, all of a sudden you've got these beautiful waves of communication that we get to play with and push against. But we need that storm in order to get the waves. Otherwise, they're not even there.
Yeah. I think you need that. You need that danger. You need that power. You need, you need to have that. So Yeats, like you're a New Zealander, Kiwi, we all grew up, same post-colonial culture. We all read the same poetry, Oxford Book of Verse at school. So there's a poem, you would have read it, maybe you forgot it, but we all read it. And I remember reading it when I was about 15. And he goes, a lonely impulse of delight drove me to this tumult. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath in balance with this life, this death. He's talking about an airman that's going up there to fly against the Nazis, against the Germans. This was before Nazis, against the Germans' First World War. And how this pilot does it for the sensation. And that's why we surf. We surf for that sensation. And the greater the risk and the challenge and the size, the better the stoke, the higher the level of stoke. So there is that opposite, like you've identified. So surfers, we understand that balance. You know what I mean? We get up on the board for the first time. There's the literal aspect of balance, but also there's a lot of balance that that we understand as, and there's a lot that surfing gives us that we don't even know, and we're not even conscious of it. But out there in the lineup, most of the time there's this connectivity, not just with the ocean and the spirituality, but with the other people out there. We don't know them. Most of the time I'll go surfing. Maybe I'll know a couple of my mates out there, but I don't know everyone. But we kind of get on, there's very seldom fights. Everyone sort of takes their turn to a certain extent. Unless you're in a super crowded condition like the Superbank, where I'm sure Raglan gets out of control. But generally, there's a decorum. There's a balance. And it's like when we float. It's very... I've actually devoted a big chunk of my career to like looking beneath the surface there, just beneath the surface, to see what lessons and or what inspiration, what knowledge we can glean from surfing. It's very profound. And then I try to to show this and illustrate this to people that have never surfed before in their lives. And let me tell you, they love it. People love what surfing represents. Surfing doesn't represent World Surf League, spinning aerials, big wave surfing at Nazaré. Surfing, that's not how people see it. I mean, in my estimation, and like I speak to more people about surfing than anyone on the planet. People love the notion of humility with this big ocean. They love the notion of spirituality, of connecting to nature, of the unknown, of the uncertainty, the fear, the perseverance, the resilience, all this beautiful stuff that we don't really learn anywhere else. I mean, I went to university, I went to grad school. I didn't learn about stuff like that. I learned about differentiation and integration at calculus. I mean, it's like I learned about, Adam Smith and Milton Friedman but surfing, man, surfing it's really taught me about life.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I see surfing as more of an art form than a sport. And I think most of my listeners do. And I often ask my listeners and my clients as a surf coach, I don't usually train what you might think of as the shortboard rider. And sometimes I'll ask my clients and listeners, who's your favorite surfer? And they actually don't have an answer. They just love surfing because surfing to them is not a sport. It's a lifestyle and it's an art form.
People don't know about the sport. People don't know who Kelly Slater is. They don't know who Laird Hamilton is. Maybe they've kind of heard of Bethany Hamilton, the young girl that got her arm ripped off by a shark. But surfing is, people do not see it. Non-surfers do not see surfing as a sport. You're 100% correct. They see it as a lifestyle. They see it as this sort of man against nature, this creative pursuit. And I've always thought surfing is this unbelievably creative pursuit. But I've always thought that professionalism and art form can coexist together and not in parallel lines. Some of the best waves ever ridden in the world now are ridden during a surfing competition. And I'm talking about as art. When I see Felipe Toledo or I see Kelly or I see these guys, when I saw Kelly at Masters this year, and that is like art with fear, because there's very few sports that have art with fear, that are not bound by lines. Perhaps snowboarding, skiing. But in surfing, there's like this nakedness. You're naked. You've got a little pair of board shorts on. A lot of the time when you're surfing big stuff like in Hawaii, okay, some other places, wetsuits, but there is this sort of like this, you're vulnerable. And I think in that there is there's a respect for that. We haven't got big crush helmets on and we don't have boots, and it's sort of, there's a vulnerability there that people, I think, are very appreciative about.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like even within the competitive nature of the sport of surfing, you still can't deny the art form and the ocean, because you will get humbled instantly. Like in tennis, if you try and hit the ball too hard, what's the consequences? You miss. But in surfing, it's death. It could be death.
You get your brains bashed in. So there is that sort of that like existential element to surfing. Yeah, there's that life and death. Like Yates wrote, "I balanced all but all to mind. The years to come seem a waste of breath. In balance with this life, this death." Yeah, it's very profound words that I think have this application to surfing. But it's so funny that we're talking on this on this subject, because I wrote something today. I love posting on LinkedIn and Instagram. I love posting just my thoughts. It's so cool. Sometimes I can send something. I wrote something about my dad the other day beautiful piece about my dad on Father's Day, and it went out to like over 300,000. Got 300,000 interactions. So it's so cool that most of them are from non-surfers, because LinkedIn is not really a site that is. I mean, certainly there are a few surfers on it, but on Instagram too, you can get very, very cool interaction. And in terms of the vulnerability and nakedness, I wrote this. I've always thought that the true test of a surfer's ability is how he or she carves on that long, fast, perfect wall that stretches out endlessly into the future. The unending wall at J-Bay reveals all. Talent, style, creativity, commitment, rhythm and flow are all on display, with nowhere to hide any deficiencies. J-Bay is a wave that's easy to ride, but a wave that is hard to ride well. It's a truly magnificent wall stretched out infinitely by a hard southwest wind, magnifying one's speed. And when you lay down that rail on the bottom turn, it is the longest carve of your life. Sure, tubes and airs are exciting and important, but a carve is like a pure brushstroke emanating from the soul to the heart, to the mind, and out through the body and board and onto a white embroidery on that expansive and windswept wave face. J-Bay reveals who you are as a surfer. It lays your soul bare as you look for that pure line.
I love that.
It's so much fun to do this, and I get stoked doing it, and the crew out there in the ether, hey, they write to me and they get stoked, and the guys and girls and people that have been, maybe someone's going through a tough time, and when you do your webcast, there's going to be someone that's listening to something you say, or one of your presenters saying, it can have a fundamental impact on where they are right then. Like, people will say, hey, Shaun, I needed this today. And it just makes you feel good. You know what I mean? Makes you feel, makes you feel good.
Makes you feel connected, just like the carve. Like you, if the feeling of performing a carve like that is, if you're not present, it won't happen. So you have to be 100% present, and everything that led up to that, the drive there, the suiting up in the cold, the paddle out, the mistimed paddle out that you had to paddle out again, like this, and just for that one moment, that carve. But there's so much, we're so fascinated by that feeling in surfing. Let me ask you, how would you describe your relationship with the ocean, and how has it evolved over time?
Wow. It's interesting that Noah, when I said to him, how many chapters should we have? And he said, well, we should have 18 because it represents high life. And for me, it's been that constant in my life. And my earliest memories of being in the ocean and learning how to body surf, and then we had these like rubber, they're called surfer planes, and we had these little wooden boards, and then I got my first little 4'6" belly board, and that's when I first stood up for the first time. And they talk about animals when they're born, they imprint on their mothers or their parents. And, when I stood up for the first time, it was like I imprinted on the ocean. You know what I mean? The ocean was such a big part of me. And I can still remember that wave. So there's just been this wonderful connectivity. But it's been multi-dimensional. And it really has, Michael. It's sort of, and it's evolved. At first it was like the sensation and the love and the fun. And then the competition thing started, and I loved competition, and then my whole tube riding thing evolved, and then I went to Hawaii and started winning over there, and then riding a different way at the Banzai Pipeline and winning there, and then being part of this movement where we turned this lifestyle into a sport and an art form that we could get paid for. that in some ways captured the imagination of millions and millions of people around the world. And then surfing pushed me into business, and I started my first brand Instinct when I was 23 and started sponsoring like Barton Lynch to a world title and Tom Carroll to 2 world titles and all these other great athletes that I helped and I think in many ways mentored. Dave Parmenter and Greg Anderson and just so many Michael Burness, all these great athletes. And then as I wound up and then getting involved in the environmental movement, getting involved with Surfrider Foundation, becoming the first member in '84, the first pro surfer member, the first ambassador. And surfing just led me down these paths and then led me, and when we left South Africa after I retired and sold Instinct, led me to Patagonia. I'd never even heard of that company, I never even heard of it. I ended up working for them for a couple of years and had the most amazing time working for Yvon Chouinard and his wife Melinda and learning so much. And then my wife and I starting another business that was aligned with surfing, and then we located it right across the road from Rincon. And then the guy who phoned me up when Surfrider Foundation was starting to ask for my help, phoned me up and he said, "Hey, Shaun, Rincon's facing a challenge. I want you to give something to kids to inspire them." And I wrote Surface Code, this little 12-line code, and I will always paddle back out. I'll never turn my back on the ocean. I'll take the drop with commitment. Something super simple. And that turned into a book and turned into a speaking career and more books and workshops and programs. And it's all been surfing. But the wave has changed. And okay, now I don't, when I used to paddle out, I wanted to ride the best wave I could ride. The best wave, every time I stood up, I wanted to ride at my best. And I wanted to surf it to the absolute max, every wave. And this was until I was about 60. And then it evolved. So now I just want to take off and have a good one. That's enough for me just to have that sensation. I don't have to be the best guy in the lineup anymore. And so, the competitive aspect, and when I say competitive, I don't mean competitive as in competition. I mean competitive as in competition with self. Because we've got, as I've learned over the last 15 years since I've been doing that, we have 2 fundamental purposes in life. And this is not some deduction that I've made. This is an observation I've made from seeing, over 1 million lines of code from people. What do they write? When they write their 12 lines, what are they going to write? Because the brief is, I tell a few interesting and I think exciting, uplifting, inspirational stories about the development of the code, about commitment, about perseverance, and about connectivity. Those are the 3 principal stories. Sometimes I'll talk about creativity and innovation. And then everyone writes a code. I go, okay, you got 15 minutes, 12 lines. Every line beginning with "I will." Make a commitment. And everyone writes beautiful lines. I will pray, I'll have faith, I'll be a better father, I will do what I say I will do, I'll live a life of integrity. That's about I will be better. So the one fundamental purpose in our lives is we want to be better. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We want to be better tomorrow than we are today. That's what drives us. That's our mojo. We want to be better. And then the other aspect, and what everyone else writes, when they write their 12, sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes it's more to the one side. But the other one is, I will help others be better. So we want others to be better too. We want to help them on their path. We want to be I will be a mentor. I will give back. I will donate. So it's beautiful to see the kind of unanimity of humanity. Because in America, I don't know what it's like in Kiwi land, but in America you have a valley. You got the Republicans on one side of the valley, you got the Democrats on the other side of the valley. And there's this space in between that's filled with hatred and unkindness. And I try to build a bridge and show people, man, listen, we've got the same values.
Yeah, I love that. I'm wondering, like, I had a discussion with Donald Brink, a fellow South African. He's a surfboard shaper in San Clemente. And we were talking about how mine and his relationships with the ocean and surfing had evolved. And I'm going to put it to you, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Because initially, when I was younger, I was obsessed with surfing. Like it was an obsession. And I would almost describe it as maybe too obsessed, and maybe surfing had like this grip on me. And then you could argue that for the competitive surfer, that may be even necessary, but I'm not a competitive surfer. So I think that was detrimental to my relationship to the ocean and to surfing. And a word Donald threw out there, which I agree with, and I think is how my relationship with surfing and the ocean has evolved over the years, which is I'm not so obsessed with surfing anymore, but I'm still extremely fascinated. I'm just wondering how those two words, obsession and fascination.
For me, I'm not as obsessed with surfing, but I'm as stoked with surfing. So when I was on the tour, there was no one in the world that surfed more than me. No one. I spent more hours in the water, and I didn't spend more hours because I wanted to practice to get better and be the best, because I just loved it more. A mate of mine, he lectures up at Stanford. He interviewed me, and he said, Shaun, I use what you said to me when I teach the kids up at Stanford Law School. I talk about passion, man. I talk about stoke. That I asked this pro surfer, former number one guy, why do you think you're the best? I said, I know why. I know, because I was the most stoked. So yes, I can't surf every day, but I'm still stoked with the feeling, with the thought process, with what it's given me. When I wrote my 12 lines, and one of the lines I wrote was, I'll catch a wave every day, even in my mind. So yeah, that thought, I can close my eyes right now, I'm going to get right back on that wall at J-Bay, and it just gives me that feeling of stillness, of connectivity, of challenge, of stoke, of exhilaration. I can smell, they have this aloe there. They call it fynbos. It's like an indigenous flower, and it's just got this amazing, I can smell it right now. So yeah, I understand the fascination aspect, and that is sort of more from an observational point of view. But stoke is like the internal connectivity to it all for me. And I get people say, it's a cliched word. I don't think so. Stoke is uniquely from our tribe. You know what I mean? Yeah. That burning obsession, that feeling of just fire, exhilaration, power. Yeah.
How does that how do I word this? How does I like the word stoke, but how can, if this is too personal, you don't have to answer, but are you stoked to be in a relationship with your wife still?
I've been married now for 35 years. But the connectivity between humans, it's sort of like a wave. You know, it's like a tide. It sort of has its ebbs and flows. But the stoke for a wave, it's constant. It doesn't flow up and down like the tide. It's like a channel. It's like a plug. plugged in. That's what it's like. That's what I feel like. That okay, the ocean directly from my house here is maybe half a mile away, but I can feel it. You know what I mean? I tell you what, when I was in South Africa, when I lived there, I could walk outside. I could taste whether the surf was going to be insane or not. I could taste it. I swear. I could walk outside, I could feel it, and I could taste it. I'm not talking, I looked at the synoptic chart, or I looked at a weather prediction. That's how connected I was. But you know, it's interesting. There's a difference between Stoke and obsession. There's a difference there. I always wanted to do like lots of things. Well, not going to say lots of things, but I always loved to do different things around my surfing that kept my surfing alive and interesting and vital. I mean, I used to spend so much time in the shaping bay with my shapers. I worked with the 34 best shapers in the world. And during my career, I would go in the shaping bay with all of them. Rusty Priestendorfer, Al Merrick, Bill Barnfield, Spider Murphy, all the best guys. And I would stand there while they made my boards. So, you know, I had that, I love, and they'd cut the blank out, I'd stand on the blank. And so I really had that, really a wonderful relationship with shaping. Then I was a student at the same time, learning, because I always thought that learning was the way to get the edge. And then I loved the entrepreneurial aspect as well. I loved giving back to kids. I think I gave my first talk when I was 19 years old at a school. I was terrified, but you know, I love to do interesting stuff around surfing. So it wasn't like sort of one thing, just the one. It kept it all alive and vital for me.
So there's always sort of that, I like the word mastery, because not in terms of how you're going to master surfing, but it just gives that sense of, I'm just going to be a little bit better. I'm going to just betterment.
Some of my friends that are really clever and they're really great writers and stuff, I always call them a sensei. I always call them, they're like a teacher. They've mastered, they have this great sort of mastery.
But they're probably, you'd only call them that because they're still actually wanting to learn. They're still learning.
Yeah. And let me tell you, the best companies that I deal, some of the companies I deal with, the best ones, are the ones that have this philosophy of lifelong learning. So I'll tell you what surfing, one of the things I think surfing really teaches you is humility. So the best companies and the best CEOs and the best leaders, they have this humility that they're interested in this concept of lifelong learning. So what happens is the way I work out, I'll work with a big company and they'll pay me to go there and present a workshop and do a keynote. It might be at a huge conference or whatever. It's all different kind of ways, or it might be virtual. So every time I do a paid speaking engagement, I'll do a free one. So I'll do a free one for a school, university, rehab clinic, community, whatever. I just like to do a free one as well. So I remember a few years ago, the surfing industry was really on the ropes in a very bad way. And I remember I phoned up the biggest company at the time, and I spoke to left a message for the CEO, and I said, you know me, I work with the best companies in the world, best universities. I would love to come and do a program for your team. It's free. I just want to help your team. Nah.
I'm not surprised.
I didn't even get a call back. And and my wife said to me, Shaun, why do you even contact those companies? Because they have no respect for you. They have no respect for learning. They have no respect for their team members. And that's why they're in the They are having such a hard time. Okay, it's not all companies in surfing. You know, my wonderful friend Paul Nordy's got this great brand called Whistler, and he's like full soul, and Patagonia is like unbelievable. I did an event Patagonia for my new book there the other night. But there is a whole crew of companies that know everything about everything. And it's sad because surfing teaches us so much, and it teaches about humility and about learning. I mean, what surfer ever won a world title without falling on his arse a gazillion times and paddling back out? A lot of people maybe in these companies haven't actually surfed, so these are lessons that could help them. Well, that's the road that they travel on. And it's sad to see that these big outfits that are representing the essence and soul of surfing are not looking at how surfing can actually help them. They built on Stoke. Get back in touch with it. Plug in.
Well, time will sort that out. Tends to, but I think there is a sector of the surfing world that sees surfing as very shallow, very selfish, and that's actually one of the I don't think that's my listeners, but what a lot of beginner surfers sometimes have to deal with is that sort of old school entitlement surfing, part of surfing that you were sort of alluding to. Any advice for newcomers to the art and sport of surfing, ways of dealing with that aspect of the surf world?
Yeah, I think for people that are getting into it for the first time, I really encourage them, just read Surface Code, little card that I wrote. You can find it on the web. It's free. I'm not trying to sell it or anything, but it's just 12 lines, and read it and think about it. I will paddle back out. I will paddle around the impact zone. I will never fight a riptide. These are both literal and both philosophical commitments here. I will watch out for other surfers after a big set. So, there's a lot there that a new surfer can glean from those little 12 lines. And then if you're beginning, don't go and ride the A-class waves. You don't have to go on the best day at Raglan when you've been surfing for 3 months. Just don't do it. It's going to be unpleasant for you, and you're going to be a danger to people around you. Okay, so firstly, become proficient and be respectful in the water. If someone's been paddling, if someone's been waiting for a wave, don't paddle around them. Just wait your turn. When I say get into it, I'm often say to people in the lineup, I'll be sitting waiting for a wave and it's my turn and someone will paddle straight past me and I go, hey, it doesn't work like that. You need to wait your turn. And let me tell you, in my career, I was very, very competitive and I was very tough in the lineup, but I was very fair. Very, very fair. If someone was sitting there waiting for their wave, I wouldn't just paddle around them. Maybe if they were sitting 25 yards or 20 yards out of position, I'd go up to where the position was. But if they were sitting on the button, it was their wave and then it was my wave. But when it was my wave, it was my wave. If someone tried to back paddle me, I would go not just because it was I would go out of bloody principle, because that's not how it works. Where I grew up at the Bay of Plenty in South Africa, if you paddled around a guy who was sitting waiting for a wave, you instantly got a flat hand. It was just gnarly rules. Everyone waited in line and they waited their turn. And these are all like top surfers. So there was decorum in the lineup. Everyone was respectful of each other. No one dropped in ever. So yeah, for beginners, don't paddle around the back of someone. Don't drop in. Wear a leash. Paddle around the impact zone. Read the Surface Code. There's a lot of good stuff up there.
Let me go back to Thanks for that. But let me go back to the word stoked. What is it about surfing that keeps you stoked? Is it what you were describing before, like the anticipation of the feeling of that turn or a tube ride?
Yeah, the anticipation's got a lot to do with it. I think the unpredictability and this notion that you're not actually going to get exactly what you want. It might be better, it might be worse, but it's not like at 3:00 we're going to go and we're going to have a go. It's I think the uncertainty. You know what it's? I remember reading an article years ago, and this uncertainty gives it more allure, makes it more attractive. If you know what you're going to get every time, it's not as exciting. Do you know what I mean? You don't know the outcome. You don't know the outcome. And for me, every time I go surfing, when I walk down the beach, or I walk on the rocks, whatever, and I got my board, and there's that time you do that little like jump. The wave comes to you like do a little jump over the wave, and you sort of go airless, and then you land and you float down, and then you float up again, and then you got the horizon. You got that open horizon. That's magic. I love that. And that to me represents the allure, the hope, the anticipation, like what's coming, the next wave. So even before I've caught a wave, there's that feeling. And then that one arm over the other, that feeling of, stroking out there, and then there's paddle out of the lineup, and there's a guy there, and you sit here and you move around, and then you get that paddle, and you leap to your feet. And I leap to my feet, and it's like I'm 9 years old again at the Bay of Plenty on my first ride.
Does it ever feel sometimes intimidating?
No, I've never felt. Oh, I felt intimidated once. The WSL are having the first event ever at the wave pool, Kelly's wave pool. It's called the Founders Cup.
Mm.
They've invited the 6 founders of pro surfing. Named the event after us is Rabbit. There's Mark Richards, Simon, PT, Ian Cairns, me, 6 of us. That's 6. We're going to have a go. So they got the top 16 surfers in the world sitting there, and they've gone, okay, Shaun, Rabbit, MR, you're in the water. Now, Rabbit and MR have ridden the wave. I've never ridden the bloody wave before. And I'd been watching it. I'd been watching Joel and Mick, wiping out, purling. I'm going, geez, how can these best guys in the world purl and wipe out? Of course, Kelly never wipes out because, he created the wave. So I'm sitting there, and the first wave is going to come through, and, it's sort of like a gentleman's agreement. So I'm sitting there with Mark Richards and Rabbit, my 2 greatest rivals. So the first wave is going to be a left. I go to MR. You want the first one, MR? He says, I'm not effing going left. And I go, hey, Bugs, you want the next one? He goes, I'm not going effing left either. They're going, you're up. So the wave is tricky in our front side, but now backside. I have never taken off. And I've got the 16 best surfers in the world, and all the media watch going, hey, now I'm intimidated. I think I'm going to duff it on my face plant. So then I was that, and I can remember paddling into that wave and thinking, I was intimidated. I did feel intimidation there. But I got up, bang, 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 bang. I shredded it. And then I went right into the pit, the same place where I saw Mick Fanning and Joel Parkinson nosedive. Same place, after about 5 or 6 maneuvers. But I did redeem myself. Mm. But that's a whole new aspect there. The whole the whole wave pool thing. I mean, it's mind-blowing how, what Kelly's done. I tell you what, Kelly, his contribution to surfing won't be understood for another 10 years. It's incredible what he's done from both a pure surfing perspective, changing boards, the super thin little Persian slippers with a flips, narrow, thin, and then going to ultra short 5'8" when everyone was on 6'1s. And I mean, he just, his whole technique for riding inside the tube backside, and then the wave pool, and it was really cool. I remember when Quicksilver appointed a new CEO, a guy called Andy Mooney. He's come out of the garment business, and he hired a new marketing director that came out of rugby. You know what I mean? Our religion. The guy said, "What do we want with a 40-year-old ball guy?" And I remember hearing about this, and I'd heard that Kelly went in for a meeting about renegotiating his Quicksilver contract, and I'd heard, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I'd heard that the guy kept him waiting for like 3 hours. Sheer, like, what a bloody insult. So eventually, and who knows whether it's true or not, but I'm just saying that's what I'd heard. Anyway, Kelly split up from Quicksilver and went on and did his own things. And I watched the market cap of Quicksilver. So I looked at the market capitalization of Quicksilver, the worth of the company. So share price multiplied by number of shares outstanding. I looked at the share price before Kelly left and after Kelly left. And there was no other incidents that could materially affect the stock price. There was an erosion of $250 million. They lost $250 million by not keeping a 40-year-old ball guy on the payroll. How about that? How about that marketing director for a beautiful decision?
Yeah, well, that's a hard lesson to learn. It's a hard lesson to learn. What do you think all great surfers have in common?
I think they have commitment. I think they have Stoke. I think they have creativity. I think they have imagination. I think they have flow. They have speed. They have power. They have aggression. They have rhythm. And all of them are unique. Unashamedly unique. When I think of the the greats during my period, so my period really started with the shortboard revolution. So for me, the greats, starting the shortboard revolution, Midget, Nat, Wayne Lynch, those three for that shortboard revolution. And then there was the Hawaiian, Rina Abelera, Barry Kanaipuni, Jeff Hackman, Larry Bertelman, and then all those amazing Aussies that came up through my period, Rabbit, Ian, MR, PT, and later, Tom Carroll. I mean, these guys were like, they were every one of them was so different. They derivation is a curse, but it can be a form of inspiration. But there's just too much derivation. There's too much. I'm just saying, not as some old guy making a pronouncement, but as I said, there's too much artifice and not enough art. I love it when I'll see someone out there and they'll just like go off differently. Philippe Toledo, John Florence, these guys are they're supernaturally talented, but they've got their own things happening. You know what I mean? They got that. John's got his like skateboard arms by his side. Philippe's got his kind of like power power jujitsu style, he's like a ninja. The way he does his carves, he doesn't just carve, he carves and jags it at the same time. And then, John with those beautiful, sublime, extended, like carves, like he's riding a single fin from 1970, a pintail that's 11 inches wide with a big, gnarly, hunking single fin on the tail. Just keeps that rail in the water for so long you can have a nap. So yeah, these are the great ones are unashamedly authentic.
Like the great words. What's the best surfing advice you ever received?
Well, from a competitive perspective, it came from my father. When you win like a gentleman. When you lose like a man. So that for a young boy was very profound. And then for me, I always like to tell people that the words of others are important because that's how you learn. But for direction and action and a path, your words are the most important. The words that you write. So when I wrote Surface Code, and I've spoken about it so much, and it's very dear to my heart. I carry it around with me in my wallet. I wrote a line in there which has been my best advice to myself. Because when I wrote those words, my life was on an amazing trajectory. I had a company that was really successful, that a $1 billion company wanted to buy. I had a new book at the publisher. I was still surfing. Amazing. And I wrote, I will always paddle back out. And then I lost my son. But those words, man, helped me. I gave advice to myself. And I took my words to heart because it's my code. And everyone can write the code. And their words will lift them out of dark times. I will guarantee you that. I will promise you, I will absolutely unequivocally state, if someone spends 20 minutes and they write the code, 12 lines, every line begins with I will, those words that they write, their words, your words, that's the key. Finding the light to turn on in dark times, I'll tell you that. It's helped hundreds of thousands of people. And it's open source code. So anyone can use it any way they want, and it's not going to even cost them 1 cent. 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. Write your code. Write it with your family. Write it with the people you love. Write it with your colleagues at work. Write it with, if you're in a rugged team, write it with your rugged team. If you're in a soccer team, write it with your soccer team. If you're in a rehab clinic, write it with your compadres in the rehab clinic. If you're in a group of PTSD survivors, write it. If you're in a university group, write it. If you're a C-suite of a company that's a $30 billion company, get the C-suite together, write it.
It's important advice because we can do all of you can read this piles of books on motivation and positive thinking and philosophy that you can read and you can get everyone's take on it. But if you don't sit down and translate that stuff into your own words and use and put pen to paper and put a motor action to that, it doesn't translate.
I put it, it's in my wallet. A lot of people cut it out and they put it on their screen or their computer, or they keep it in a drawer, and it's got a lot of power. This very famous university here did a study on the method, and they studied 3 companies that I'd gone to, big companies, and they said, Shaun, interesting. This is the most transformational. They call it an intervention. This is the most transformational positive intervention that we've ever studied. I went, well, that's pretty cool. He said, here's some of the quotes we've got from the participants. I wasn't involved in the study. I just gave them I'd done events there. I gave them the names and they went off and interviewed me. So I lost 40 pounds as a result of writing my code. How about that? I lost 40 pounds. I wrote the code with my 8-year-old son. We put it on the refrigerator. Our relationship's better. It's working. My code's like my North Star. My code is freaking incredible. These are not my words. So that's what's a stoker. What stokes me up the most is that it's like, you know what it's like? Like this little code, it's like a little board that someone can jump on it and they can ride it on a new wave. That's what it's like.
Those two words, I will. There's a lot to them. First, because if you're going to sit down and write I, you're like, oh, who am I? Oh, I, me. Oh, I will. That's like, oh, that's a commitment. Oh gosh, that's also my will, my strength. Oh, so it's not like those two words, I will. It's so simple yet so profound when you start thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's you're going to do something. You know what I mean? It's about hope. Like this young girl wrote to me and she said, "Oh, Shaun, I've been really struggling, and thanks for coming in and speaking, and I've been having mental problems, and it's been tough through COVID, etc." But she said, I got to tell you, thank you for the hope that you've shared with me. That's what it's about. It's about hope, because it's about not right now. It's about that moment in the future, I will, that you're going to cross, that you're going to go towards. It's like surfers, when you take off, you're riding towards a place. Yeah, I must say, surfing has given me so much, Michael, and I'm so grateful. I'm so appreciative. It's helped me out of some tough times, and I get so much joy now of doing these presentations for large companies, for schools, universities, whatever. I love to be able to share what surfing's given me.
Let me just acknowledge you, Shaun, for your vulnerability, your tenacity, your innovation, and your numerous contributions in not only the surfing world, but now, within the inspired leadership and, philosophical and psychological worlds that you're doing now. So thank you for that. It's awesome to see. And
thank you.
I've got one final question for you is, let's say in some hypothetical situation, you've got to leave us from this world eventually. And on that day, sadly, you have to take everything with you, all your books, but you're allowed to leave us with 3 sentences. What would those 3 sentences be?
The first sentence, I'll always paddle back out. The second sentence would be, I will know that there will always be another wave. And the last sentence would be, I will realize that all surfers are joined by one ocean. That would be it. But I want these 12. That's my epitaph right there.
Yep, and they shall be there. All right, thank you. Shaun, do you have a website that you can point people in the direction of?
Yeah, I have a website called shauntomson.com, and there you can go there. You can learn a bit more. There's a couple of videos up. But anyone that's listening, I encourage you, of course, write your code. Like I say, it's open source code. Take it out with your family, friends, colleagues, whomever, and use it any way, shape, or form you want to. But connect with me on LinkedIn. I mean, if you have interest, connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. LinkedIn's pretty cool because you can have a little bit more of discussion on there. I love connecting with people. And I'll tell you this. So maybe there's a listener out there that can help me with something. So I'm coming out to Australia in September. I'm doing a couple of events. I'm doing an event for a group called the Young Presidents Organization in Sydney. Then I'm doing another event for the Sunshine Coast City Council. And then I'm doing an event for a charity, which is a pretty cool charity called the Board Meeting Surf Charity. So that's going to take place in from the 19th to the 23rd of September. But it would be so amazing to come down to New Zealand for a day and do a cool event down in NZ. I would love it. my father loved New Zealand. He went there to watch the Springboks play rugby in the 60s. And he actually met a beautiful New Zealand girl and brought her back, wanted to marry her, but she decided to bail out. But I would love to go to New Zealand. So if anyone out there's interested, hook up with me. Let's do something. Right. Let's inspire a corporation, and then we can do a corporation, and I'll do a free one for a university or a school or whatever. It could be insane. Would love it.
Okay, so that would be late September.
Yeah, it would be like the 23rd of September.
Yeah,
in that area. Yeah, if someone has interest. Yeah, because like maybe there's a big multinational out there, or just a cool company that wants to uplift, inspire, and re-engage their team members. Gosh
knows we need it here in New Zealand at the moment. So some inspiration.
Everyone needs it, man. Everyone's been having a tough time. It's you got that wonderful. I'd love to meet her. That wonderful Prime Minister of yours.
Yeah, aim high. I'll send Jacinda a text.
Yeah, no, she's a cool woman. She's she's definitely one of the top 10 leaders in the world at the moment.
I will put links to all of your stuff in the show notes for those listening. And again, thank you so much for your time,
Michael. And great for the work that you do. I'm stoked, and thanks for connecting, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and hopefully, who's ever is out there listening that you got something out of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Shaun.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, maybe even a non-surfer friend. Any feedback, comments, questions, mike@surfmastery.com, or engage on Instagram @surfmastery. Until next time, keep surfing.